Test one. Okay, good. Welcome. Testing 1, 2. All right. Good evening. Good evening. How's it going? Good evening, everybody. There we go. We do have a couple more seats up front if you're looking for some spaces. If you really feel like having fun, you can sit up here at the dais, but you might have to answer some questions. But that should be fine. Can you guys hear out in the hallway though? Okay, those are on. Okay, sometimes those speakers are off. And we are also streaming this to our YouTube channel on the World Wide Web. Welcome, I'm Mayor Ben Kessler with the City of Bexley. This is a fun meeting because we are bridging two jurisdictions, a practice that we have, I think, become better at over time. And I wanted to really quickly talk about, as we talk about Livingston Avenue, where things stand with Livingston Avenue today and where we're headed in the future, I wanted to really briefly revisit the relationship, the partnership that the City of Bexley has forged with the City of Columbus in the planning process for the joint Livingston Avenue plan. And so in theory, if this worked, it would do something that it's not doing. Hold on one second. Let me call technical support over here. So, joint Livingston plan overview. So the cities of Bexley and Columbus embarked on a joint Livingston Avenue plan in the years 2021-ish, 2022. Does that sound about right? With the objective to increase safety on the corridor and elevate the standard of living in general for residents on and near the corridor. The context at the time, it was, and we were having incredibly alarming accidents, vehicles, and houses. Really excessive speeding on Livingston Avenue. And some of you might be here today saying, hey, we still have the same thing. We'll talk about that in a second. So we created this planning process to create long-term objectives and short-term objectives for increasing the safety of Livingston Avenue. The study area went from Nelson to James and included obviously this area that was the City of Bexley, which is between Alum Creek and Chelsea essentially, and the areas of Columbus on the south side of Livingston and to the east of that. And notably, and the reason the partnership with Columbus is very special and really appreciated is Bexley's city limits actually don't start until the north side of the sidewalk on Livingston Avenue. So the City of Columbus entirely controls the Livingston Avenue corridor, including the sidewalks. Bexley's municipal boundary happens just north of those sidewalks. And so any sort of improvement that we as the City of Bexley want to see happen has to happen within the context of a robust partnership with the City of Columbus. Conditions were studied, impediments to safety were studied. There was a traffic study looking at what traffic was actually doing. Where are the signalized intersections? Does it warrant any changes to what's there? And out of this came a variety of recommendations and some really what might feel like pie in the sky concepts. But guess what? That's how you get from point A to point B, is you figure out where do you want to go and how do you get there. And so objectives for the commercial district of Livingston Avenue were formed that called for, to the extent possible, reducing curb cuts along Livingston, trying to start circulating traffic behind those businesses, creating a tree lawn and a wider pedestrian space, mixed use paths. In the residential district, it called for eliminating what was at the time two-way traffic on both ways, so 2 lanes going both ways, 4-lane street. In the short term, moving to what we see today, and Kelly Scacco from Columbus is going to talk a little bit about that project. The short-term recommendations that took Livingston to a 2-way two-lane street with a center turn lane, and eventually making those permanent, where that center turn lane, when it's not being used to turn onto streets, becomes a median that creates an actual division between traffic. So that some of the behavior we're seeing today would be stopped by that. And also calls for multi-use paths on both sides of the street. Multi-use paths are a minimum of 10 feet in width. They create ability for cyclists and pedestrians to have a safe interface with Livingston Avenue. And one thing that I feel is very crucial is a true tree lawn on Livingston Avenue. So today, when we're walking along Livingston, you're often very close to the traffic as you walk. This would create a really meaningful buffer between the pedestrian and the street. This is a long-term plan. The good news is that since we worked together on this plan, I don't want to spoil the plot. We're going to get to that in a second. We've made really good progress on funding and starting to move forward with the vision that you see in front of us. And we're going to get into that. But before we go there, that's an illustration in 3D of what that looks like. Before we go there, Kelly Scacco with the City of Columbus, thank you so much for joining us, Kelly, is going to talk about traffic statistics, short-term improvements, and progress to date.
Hi, good evening, everyone. As Mayor Ben said, I am Kelly Scacco. I'm the Public Service Director for the City of Columbus. Show of hands, how many people, the last time I might have seen you, January of 2022, we were over at the JCC at a public meeting for this project. Anybody in there that night? Yeah. Yeah, okay, online, all right. And I stood in front of a podium similar to this and said, we are going to get this project resurfaced later this year. And we did. We went out there and did a resurfacing project to do what we were calling our short-term project improvements to road diet Livingston Avenue. I mean, we were seeing severe crashes. It wasn't safe to not only walk on Livingston Avenue, it wasn't safe to sit in your kitchen on Livingston Avenue, which was sad. So we went out there and we resurfaced, we road dieted. Hopefully you all have seen that there has been improvement. Maybe not as much improvement as you would like, but I do have some statistics to share that we've done. We did some before studying, and then we did some statistics afterwards. So we measured the speeds on this street before and after the 2022 implementation of the lane reconfiguration. We found that average speeds decreased by as much as 9 miles per hour in some areas of the corridor. And in one segment, the number of people driving each day in excess of 50 miles per hour, this is a 35 mile per hour zone, people driving excess of 50 miles per hour, which is of course 15 miles per hour above the speed limit, decreased on an average of decreased on average from 1,061 people driving above 50 miles per hour on that corridor down to 98. Now 98 driving above 50 miles per hour, I think we would all agree, is 98 people too many, but that was a decrease in 91% from people driving over 50% or 50 miles per hour and above. From a crash standpoint, we looked at the before and after crashes on Livingston Avenue from just east of College to just west of James Road. So not including the College or James intersections themselves, right? In 2019, this section saw a total of 78 crashes. 2019 number, 78 crashes, when this was still a 4-lane section. The crashes dropped to 40 crashes in 2023, which represents a 49% reduction in crashes in this section of roadway after the road diet. Again, 40 crashes too many, but a reduction of 49% after the road diet. Are those the kind of safety statistics you were looking for? Yeah, so that's where we are with the safety statistics, and I cannot stay super long tonight, but I am happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions for me right now.
Quick round of Q&A. We have much more Q&A.
Okay. It was tested in various sections. There were different segments along between College and James Road. So they had it in different segments. I don't have that information right in front of me, but I can get you that information. Yes. I do not. I don't know. I don't know that we ever had a fatality out there. We've not. Yeah, yeah. Okay. 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 Yeah. Okay. Um, but I do not have the statistics that if any of the 40 were fatalities. I don't believe I've seen a fatality since 20 in the
The Ohio Department of Public Safety keeps those statistics, and we do have them.
2 weeks ago we had one. What intersection was it at? Yeah.
It is. I asked for a different subset of data, so I asked from Al Creek to Henry, which is a little bit of overlap.
Sure.
And the numbers show 396 active for those 3 years, but it did show a decrease in 23.
Okay.
Last week, January, and the number was 39 for the 6 months, so it is showing a decrease. In terms of what they're talking about, in terms of fatality, yeah, that's a pretty fatality. That's Eastmore and Ferndale.
3 fatalities. Oh, okay. Yes,
So, electronic speed signs.
sure.
House at the edge of the lot line. I've been out there in the summer cutting grass and I'd see a car go flying by. And I looked up at the sign and I've seen several that were parked in the 70+ range. So they do fly down through there. And I haven't seen any going that fast, since the improvement. You definitely slowed the traffic down, but I've still seen them drag racing using the center turn lane as one of the race lanes since the improvements.
Yeah,
Talking about, they don't live by the same rules.
no, unfortunately they do not. And this was the short-term fix and Mayor Ben's going to get into the long-term fix, but this was something that we could do very quickly to help address again the notion that people were going into people's homes. I question for the group, has anybody I don't know this. Has anybody had a house hit since we put the road diet in? Okay. All right. Well, fingers crossed, that trend does continue to hold. Okay.
Information on how many calls for service you had between Allen Creek and James Road this year, from the police department.
I think the police are coming on later. So, yep. Okay.
Speeding, that absolutely down. But the problem we have is people are just taking their time, going about their business, and then all of a sudden somebody's using a turn lane to pass. You still got drag racing. Biggest problem you've got is College Avenue, correctly. And it turns from 2 lanes to 1 lane. It becomes a drag strip. Okay, off the traffic light. Either going west or you're coming east. And,
Okay.
I mean, people are, you've got a medium, I think it's down around Brandon that they put in.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there for a while.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is we want to know why. There's no police presence. Because it's like, if you leave your kid unattended in the kitchen, he's time to stay out with cookies, okay? He's not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Right.
It's encouraging bad behavior because there is no police presence.
Okay.
Police are coming up in a second.
Yep.
Is there a reason that they didn't make it a one-term fix You take your life in your hand. When cars are trying to beat each other before the narrows down to one lane.
Okay. Yeah. Eric, are you familiar? Yeah. And Francis? Okay. Okay, yeah. There's no turn on to Francis. And so people are trying to make the left onto Francis. Is it prohibited? It's just not protected. We could take a look at that. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Sure. No, I mean, without prohibiting the left turn is what I'm hearing. You'd like us to look at figuring out a way to maybe make that protected. Okay, we can take a look at that. I can't promise we'll fit it in, but we'll take a look at it and see if there's something we can do temporarily. Mhm. Okay, we'll take a look at it. That's the promise I'll make tonight. We'll take a look at it. What was that one? Okay. All right, one more. Okay. Yes. Okay.
That side of the street, Bexley's on it, is worse. And if you're found, what's found, look at that, that's, you rarely see that sign, but something's not lost. You're not gonna see it much.
Okay.
Are those trees on private property?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
We can.
But if, okay. All right. All right. Anything else? Oh, yes. Ooh. Well, I can tell you that Linkus is not going to go down Livingston. The capacity, they did the studies and they decided that, like Linkus was the best, Main Street was the best alternative for the east side of Columbus, Bexley, Whitehall, Reynoldsburg. And I would say that I would, if you did the traffic studies, try to fit in a dedicated lane there. It's going to be really tight. I don't know that you could even fit it in. We'll see. But it's going down. I mean, it's the alternative is Main Street. I think that, I don't know if Mayor Ben, if you wanted to address that anymore, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I did say it's a regional CODA initiative to determine where they want to put their route. And Livingston would be further complicated because this plan that we're talking about wouldn't work if you had Linkus because of the fact that you're going down to one lane. But regardless, it's not a Bexley decision. It's not even
the Columbus decision. No.
CODA initiating where they feel the route is best populated and has the best future for their transit. We do have, I don't know if Eric can address the additional infrastructure questions when the time comes later on.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of Kelly's time.
Okay.
We're coming up to 6 o'clock hour, and we have our police officers from Columbus and Bexley that I'd like to introduce.
There's one more question.
Last question, all right.
Thank you so much. As we all know, East Livingston is east and west. And so during different times of the day,
Mhm.
you cannot see the lights. And in the meeting, Jim Craig, I made a comment that if you put frames around those stoplights, they get a more reflective aspect. And then also, is there a way to change the lights so that it matches what's going next to it? 5-second hold, so nobody moves. That would help a lot. I'm right on the corner of Livingston and Roosevelt.
Okay.
And about 191, and I hear people saying, I couldn't see the lights. Because they're either in the mornings, they're staying, in the mornings, they're getting right in the sun, in the afternoons, they're getting the sun in the west. And so those frames would help, and then pausing those lights.
And I assume in Bexley you have the pedestrian, lead pedestrian.
Put 'em up, that's the most wonderful thing I've seen in years, because I had trouble seeing the light too. When the sun started to go
We
down.
copied them from Columbus.
Okay. We'll take that suggestion with us. Okay. So I'm looking at putting the frames around the signals as a possible deterrent. I'm looking at what possibly anything in the 5-second pedestrian interval and what possibly could be done as part of the left turns on Francis and Livingston. And Duclair. All right. And I've got our city engineer, Jim Pike, here as well this evening. And I'm going to leave you in very capable. Yeah. Yeah.
A significant safety improvement.
Oh, yes.
Usually, you do have to check because it does add weight. You do get, you have to check the signal to make sure that everything can handle it, even a little bit, because then you got more wind blowing on a bigger surface. But those do make a huge improvement, just that simple yellow background. But we'll reach out to our traffic department.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time this evening. And I'm leaving you in very capable hands with our city engineer, Jim Pike, and our project manager, Eric Lambert.
So just kind of curious, quick show of hands. If you are a Columbus resident, raise your hand. There we go. Bexley residents, raise your hand. All right. Glad that we have both jurisdictions here. We have the Bexley Chief of Police, Chief Gary Lewis here, along with his colleagues from the city of Columbus he's going to introduce to talk a little bit about policing and safety along Livingston Avenue. Thank you, Chief Lewis.
Council, want to acknowledge you first and foremost.
Not sure what's going on over there, but we'll get started. So good evening. My name is Gary Lewis, Chief of Police here in Bexley. A lot of questions, comments, concerns with traffic on Livingston and really just safety overall. So we thought we would come in and really just kind of talk about a lot of the dynamics and the partnership between us and Columbus Police Department. And jurisdictional dynamics, there's a lot of feeling of safety, and we've got really just three different perspectives: education, engineering, and enforcement. And looking at what engineering on Livingston and the impact that that's had, how that has helped reduce average speeds. But before I get into that, I do want to introduce Deputy Chief Weiner, along with two commanders from Columbus. Their intersections of jurisdictions overlap one another that impact us here in Bexley. And so they're here to also answer some questions. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but one of them is a Bexley graduate.
You had no idea.
If you just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kelly Weiner. I am Deputy Chief with Columbus Division of Police. I am the Deputy Chief of Patrol. So I oversee all patrol operations in the city. I've been with the division for over 27 years, and I've brought two experts here with me. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Heath Gillespie. I have the far east side, so it's 9 precinct, 14 precinct, 20 precinct. I imagine we'll get into some details of some stats and just different things of trends we're seeing right now, and then some initiatives we're taking in the far east.
I'm David Gitlitz. I have downtown, south end, so up to the west side of Bexley, kind of Nelson Road area. And You guys say anything else that I missed? I'm a Bexley graduate if I didn't.
So thank you so much for the partnership. You know, over the past number of months, we've met with a lot of stakeholders. So I see a lot of familiar faces in here and appreciate the opportunity to really be proactive and talk about it and also answer questions specific to that. One of the things that we really have done is increase the visibility. I know that there have been some questions about Livingston Avenue in particular. The mayor had shared in our last city council meeting and looked at the numbers and seeing where, according to the Ohio Department of Public Safety, we've seen a significant drop in crashes on Livingston Avenue, especially that happened between, I believe we looked at James to 70 and saw a drop. We also saw the average speeds had dropped. But we know that there is a feeling that people are still out there speeding. And so we want to kind of talk about what that looks like. I think Columbus and obviously looking at some of their top priorities, it's not a mystery that across the country, manpower, personal resources, it's a challenge. And so we're all faced with trying to do more with less and looking at different resource reallocation models to address a lot of the issues. But again, we wanted to come out and just talk to you about what we're doing, what we're trying to see from a business perspective. I see some of our business owners here from Livingston, as well as some of our residents. So who wants to go first? Questions? Why am I surprised? Yes, sir.
How frequent things throughout the year that has been happening. And my question is, we do have a lot of issues with supply and demand. And pastors wrote down and all. I understand that you end up with a lot of stuff going on 70 now.
So I want to make sure that I get your question. So you want to know calls for service in general or on Livingston or traffic crash data? Okay. So would it be acceptable if I get that data and get with you one-on-one in case they don't have all of that tonight?
Yeah, we would need parameters, you know.
To be able to, especially for this year, and then we can do some comparisons. Okay, is that good? Okay. Yes, sir.
Visibility on the Livingston because, you know, that might help it for some of the bad actors.
Well, I can tell you, one of our enforcement methods that we've been doing is monthly, we look at crime stats. And we focus our visibility on the violent crime areas. So right now we have been in the Mayfair refugee corridor and the Bryce and the 70 corridor. So obviously we do have resource allocation issues in 2024. Policing is different than it was 20 years ago. We don't just stop everything that moves. We try and get uniformed visibility and enforcement in these targeted areas because of the violent crime. So I can tell you right now, just from August numbers, that's where we're currently at. And the visibility, we see the decrease. So obviously, if there's a cruiser parked outside of the store, someone is less likely to go and rob the store. If there's a cruiser out there, there's still some common sense to that. We try and take preventative measures such as that. We go where the data leads us to say, that's not to say that we wouldn't increase visibility on Livingston. It is as we have available staffing and where the needs are the most.
Yes, ma'am.
So we heard that the city of Bexley's jurisdiction ends at the sidewalk on Livingston, so it's really all city of Columbus that might do traffic enforcement there. Could you explain sort of what the boundary is in terms of if Bexley police were, you know, on one of the side streets, could they pull somebody over on Livingston, or is it totally out of their hands?
So where the offense takes place. So if the offense were to take place in Bexley and the individual continued and stopped on Livingston, absolutely we could do that. But true traffic enforcement on anything outside of our jurisdiction, the Ohio Revised Code doesn't permit us to. But what it does do it does allow us to partner with agencies and to bring really to them concerns of our citizens. And we know that South Bexley, Berwick area, there's been this outcry. Hey, we feel as though traffic concerns are a continued concern as well as just potential incidents. I know there have been a couple of fatal crashes that have happened on Livingston Avenue and traffic being diverted coming back through the city. So that is a dynamic that we're very aware of. When that happens, we try to work with Columbus in getting things rerouted the fastest and best way when it occurs. It's unfortunate, but that happens. It happens. I saw it. Yes, sir.
Statistic that we heard 19 to 23. It's no secret, I don't think, to anybody in this room that between 19 and 23, policing has changed, the world has changed. Not just Columbus, not just those stats I find are very skewed. I don't think they're very accurate. I know as a 22-year business owner that sits 100 feet from Livingston Avenue 5 days a week, I know that in 17, 18, 19, 20, Columbus police were very visible up and down Livingston Avenue. Okay, and I'm obviously in the commercial district. That is no longer. Visibility is, as you said, sir, violent crimes and things, the visibility deters that stuff. I understand the resources are not quite there. I also understand that traffic is not going to take precedence over what's really important, the violent crimes and things where people need to place. But I find that those statistics that we're using are very skewed. It doesn't mean that they're not happening. For instance, the traffic crash data I watch on a daily basis, and this is no exaggeration, on a daily basis, I watch an accident that Columbus Police does not respond to, because either it's a hit and run, or because it's not an injury accident, several different variables. The stats that you're looking at are skewed for that reason. You have many more offenders traffic because and again, this is not a Columbus problem, this is not a Bexley problem, this is all over. People know that they can get away with stuff. And so that's why those numbers are not quite accurate. We're looking at studies, if we were looking at the same studies in 2019, I think it would be completely different if we were using the same parameters, if we had the same visibility, but we don't. And I think that's what everybody wants to see. We all want to fix. But we also understand that the resources aren't there. So where does that, I just have a problem with it because I watch it, I see it, and those are things that are not getting, they might be calls for service. But again, on a daily basis, I see things happen to where Columbus does not respond for whatever reason, whether it was no injury or whether somebody took off or there was an exchange of information or what have you.
So I don't want to speak directly for Columbus. I'll share my perspective and I'll let them respond directly. My experience across the country, when you see larger agencies are simply telling people to exchange information as opposed to actually conducting a true traffic crash investigation, those days are gone. I can remember even on the interstates where we would tell people, don't move your car. But now we tell them, pull over, exchange information if you can. And then, so I think a lot of that is just a change in the times. So it's not just law enforcement, but I think the insurance industry has changed and impacted that. So I don't disagree that the number, I wouldn't say they're flawed. I would just say we're not tracking them the same because the reporting mechanism has changed and the expectation has changed. But please.
If it's a non-injury automobile accident, we fundamentally change our policy. We don't respond. So,
And I completely understand that, but that's going back to my opinion, the numbers are going to be skewed.
they're different.
Yes, ma'am.
On
And
that,
then I'll follow up with you guys back down.
clarify when that policy changed about the accident.
I would have to get back.
I'm just wondering if it's like, since you're comparing to 2019.
I won't do the exact thing, just I don't remember. During COVID, we stopped it, we went back to it for a short period of time, and then we stopped it.
So the 2019 accident data are before that policy.
We would have
change,
responded
probably.
to it.
So that does affect the comparison we're trying to make here, I think.
Yes.
But for the last 3 or 4 years, that data should be pretty thin.
Yes, ma'am. And then I'll get you, sir and ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But it really upset seeing a homeless man in the middle of the street. That's happened more than once right there on getting onto the freeway. every day.
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes I think they might want to be hit so that they could.
Yes, I mean, you know, I think that when you look across our country of homelessness, mental health, it impacts us all and having to manage and mitigate that. So we all take that comment seriously and try to do the best we can. I will tell you, I've stood at businesses on Livingston and engaged with our homeless community and try to provide them services, and oftentimes they refuse. And so it is a very tough position, but believe you me, we hear you. I want to answer the young lady, then I'll get the two gentlemen next. Yes, ma'am.
It's a nice Saturday night. And you can't keep your windows open because Livingston becomes motorcycle alley. And I think they go there because they know there's no police presence. And the traffic might be a little less at that time of night. Oh, wow, it's scary.
They come off the sidewalks.
Yeah. I mean, they literally take over the road. I mean, I was amazed one time when I happened to be out at night and I was in the intersection. I'm like, I did like 10, 12, and they were complete in, down, up and down. I can't believe that was a one-time occurrence. So I understand that there's definitely a Saturday night that when you're going from Mayfair and Bart, that you might run up and down Livingston. I mean,
So this is helpful because what it can do, it can help me to then help shape the request and asking them with their motor unit to potentially help us in addressing that concern. So that's definitely something that we can. Okay.
I talked on that a little bit. It is a national trend, street takeovers. I'm sure you guys also know the news with it. They're doing it almost all over the city on the weekends. And I know, I think this weekend we have an operation set. Is this weekend?
Internally, we've called it Operation Burnout, and where we try to plan for these events when we find out about them or hear rumblings on social media and whatnot. And like he said, we will get a location where we think they're at, but they go throughout the city and we spend the night chasing them down.
And have you guys ever seen Fast and Furious where it's seen where they all go running? And that's kind of how it is. And we can't go and I know one time the spike like 16 cars, so that was a good day. We get new tires.
Gave us a reprieve
Right.
for a few weekends.
They all get new tires.
Took a while.
Restarted, but it's difficult to address. When you have 100 cars take off.
It's and the motorcycles present an entirely different challenge. One, okay, so we have cars and motorcycles out there visible, but the reality is now what? Now, and that's just being very honest. You know, having spent almost 5 years in Louisville, Kentucky, I literally just last week watched officers being swarmed by these individuals and taking over them and their cruisers. It's becoming very violent and often and very unsafe for officers. So how do we manage that? And so these are conversations that we're having all across the country. But sir, with the hat, I know you had a question. I wanted to be responsive. Please. Another great call out, and we'll continue to work with their motor units to see if we can get them to get back out on Livingston. So, Mr. Lewis?
Situation similar to Livingston, where you have a little bit better presence with slow down the traffic, other than you.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm 70, good 70 west, was under construction for 10 years. That's all that's out there for 8 years. I know that slowed down. So I'm sure if there's enough presence, people know.
Yeah. So, Mr. Lewis, you know me very well. And I will say this, when's the last time anybody drove Interstate 71? Interstate 71. Okay, so on Interstate 71, please no judgment. I have every milepost memorized. Every milepost. I can tell you exactly every exit, every location. It's a occupational knowledge. And I say that to say this, at every crossover, I can tell you where every state trooper is. And I can tell you that as a state trooper who had said in that median, this is what you see, the front of those cars drop when they see the car. Everybody slows down. There's nothing but brake lights. People are flashing everybody else, telling them that you're there. Yes. There's technology saying speed trap ahead. And you know what happens once they don't see that cruise in the rear view? They pick back up. And so I agree that it slows the deterrence component, but it's short-lived. And so that's why I think education, engineering, and the enforcement piece is so critical. And I will say that what's happening engineering-wise on Livingston, there has been a lot of changes where we've been able to see some reduction, but I do think that, we'll continue to find some best practices and work with our partners. So who else? Yes, sir, because you didn't really get a question, you had a comment, so please.
Limited resources.
Mhm.
Do you explain, is that financial resources or human?
It's human, and that's across the country. I think you guys are down how many hundred? 300? On what day? Yeah, yeah.
That talked about not being able to, be the crossover.
Yes, sir.
If the city of Columbus has budgeted for 200 police officers that they don't have, why can't, is there a way in that predicament that the city of Columbus could pay for the city of Bexley's police to patrol that area with the money that's already been
Yeah.
budgeted?
So great question. So this would be my response. Having tremendous respect for Columbus Police and their leadership, I reach out to their boss and I call Chief Brian and say, Chief, I know you're down folks. Why don't you let my team go and handle Livingston? And if I'm Chief Bryant, I'm going to say, Gary, great. Appreciate the call. Hey, I got Nelson. I got Broad. I've got Hamilton. I got James. If you want it, I'm going to give it all to you. So in fairness, we have a lot of adjacent roadways that impact our community, and we have to be mindful. And I think that in some ways it gives us some insulation as a department, because the mayor and council, they're going to hold me accountable to what's happening here in Bexley, but they're also, as a community, your job is to hold me accountable to work with our partners to say, what can we do to not only hear you, but try to do the best we can with under the law.
Bexley taxes. The rest of it has some kind of safety aspect being brought to us. 9 o'clock at night, it starts.
Mhm.
And so it's frustrating.
I understand that. I understand and respect that. And that's why we're being very transparent and saying what we can and can't do, but also trying to find ways to do, rather than just saying, you know what, it's not ours. So we have heard and listened. We meet very frequently with stakeholders and talk about these things and try, and there's different intervals based upon their staffing and when we can do it. So even if we come out 30 days, we give a break. So we'll see that drop, things will be good, and then it will pick up. And that's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how things work. I saw somebody else. Yes, ma'am, and then Tim, I'll get you. Yes. So camera technology, we can enforce with that. So cities are, they lose federal state monies if they utilize that technology. And typically that's at red lights, where you saw that kind of first be introduced, and that has slowly gone away. Typically with, and we've only got really in our community, we've just got Maine and or Livingston and College. It's really it from a light perspective that we would even be able to entertain something like that. And there's just a fiscal component that wouldn't be advantageous for us to do it. And that would be on the city of Columbus, and it wouldn't even be on us in Bexley. Like,
What you guys want to do, I understand the reason. Now you- I understand. I know what you got to do. I want to say that as a couple things. Or, yeah, block camera.
mhm.
Are there any, I'm not sure what does Columbus do with the, like, especially in that area? To my knowledge, there are none in that area.
So we have been advocating for the safe lock camera, but it's LPR technology and due to be favorable to one company. But we being leadership in the Division of Police have been actively what I'm searching for. Advocating, pleading with city leaders
It's expensive.
to purchase this technology.
So,
So we did recently secure a grant for I forget the exact number, but it was LPR technology, but the grant was tied to ShotSpotter technology. So the LPRs had to be placed in the 3 areas where we have ShotSpotter technology. But almost every meeting I'm in, we're talking about the benefits of LPR technology. And I've been in some meetings recently where private business owners have that have quite a lot of businesses have said, hey, can I buy some flock cameras and put it on a city light pole? So right now that those discussions are happening, but we very much support that technology. So we are constantly working towards that.
And to piggyback off what the chief said, when we have an abatement process with one of our apartment complexes, and for instance, one of them is Amberley Square, and our zone attorneys get involved, they request, as part of how to make the apartment complex better, more safe and secure, they did add a flock camera in Amberley Square prior to us even being aware that that was one of the adjustments
Good point.
the complex made. So it's not just at traffic intersections, we're trying to get as many cameras as we can in there because they assist greatly with a number of investigations. And we can share information from Ohio State, who has a ton of cameras, et cetera. So it's not just traffic intersections, et cetera. It is where we can put them when we can.
The last part that,
Never heard of them.
every day, have
Yeah.
somebody pull over on the exact. That's no longer, I've not seen that since COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody can speak on that. And what,
You want me to take that one?
what's the,
So do.
I don't know if, there's a W on toes thing, what does that look like? And is there any way that could be an option to get that some sort of visibility?
So in 2012, in 2012, the Columbus Metro Post opened up there on Allen Creek. It had 8 motor unit and 12 marked cruisers. I happen to know because I started it. And up until 2020, when COVID hit and a new superintendent came in and removed all the Metro posts in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. And so although there is still a small presence, it is nothing like it once was. And so they typically stay in the outer belts now on that 270 and getting back to old school fundamentals and staying in the rural areas and really trying to impact the fatalities that are happening, especially in Franklin County. One of the challenges is for me, and even for the patrol, and I don't want to misspeak for them, but I think the jurisdictional piece, I would never want Columbus to feel as though they weren't pulling their weight. And then we went to, for lack of better terms, a third party who has clearly said, we have got to get out of the business of working the city streets and back to the core of who we are, and that's the rural areas. And that's why.
What made that works? They are now still motorcycles.
Yes.
They are sitting on Elm Creek.
They're just getting coffee. Why don't we do one more question? Yes, sir.
But my question here is there any way that you could have a freeway patrol come in and like, you know, I mean, they've got, you know, 70 and Livingston, the back out, maybe patrol once in a while? Or is that more or less a dedicated unit, or just freeway where they are? Freeway patrol.
And here's the flip side, you know, we haven't, yeah. Yeah, and only because, only because I don't know if you guys know it or not, but there's an election coming up. I know. So this is why I say that Columbus's Motor is a primary key partner in motorcades. And so things are going to start ramping up for them. And so really, I envision in the next week or so, they're going to be getting called upon because I think you're going to start seeing an uptick. Let's face it, Ohio has always seen that. These are predictable moments. And so even in the best case in saying to you, yes, the reality is it's not going to happen. I think that they're going to be solely focused on providing that support as we look at an uptick in that. But lastly, I'll say this. For those Bexley residents and Berwick and adjacent, thank you for taking time out of your evening to come and have just open dialogue and conversation. These can continue. I try to make myself pretty available, don't I, sir? I've had to take a lot of let's say ear moments and listening, but that's my job. That's why I'm here. I'm here to listen, but not just listen, but to implement after a lot of the suggestions, the feedback. And we've solved some crimes together out there in your parking lot as well. So I want to thank Columbus Police. Cannot say it enough to have Deputy Chief and the two commanders come in and really support us. And we will continue to have not just the conversations, but to see what we're doing and adding some additional resources. And for those in the room that I see who make sure we are doing our best to address traffic concerns in Bexley as well. It's not just about Livingston. We get a number of complaints of speeding violations. And so we are using driveways of our citizens. I'm coming out and parking in driveways, increasing visibility. We're looking at buying some more handheld units with laser or radar to be able to enforce. So trust me, we're doing a lot as a direct result of your concerns. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We're good. Thank you so much for doing it. Appreciate it. All right. Guys, another round of applause. It means a lot to have our Columbus friends here. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to try to get through the next couple slides a little quickly. We're going to try to parse this as simply as we can, but we want to talk about what's coming next. The chief spoke about policy, enforcement, and infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge piece of how to continue to inform safety along Livingston Avenue. So a couple years ago, Bexley and Columbus jointly worked together to apply for funding to get the joint Livingston Avenue plan proposals and to see them, the actual long-term infrastructure put into place. And that includes reconstruction of the roadway, the landscape medians we talked about, shared use paths on both the north and south sides, the tree lawn on both north and south sides, improved street lighting, including traffic backing on the traffic lights that is actually part of this project, stormwater improvements, signal replacements, and upgrades to Dakota's service infrastructure. Again, the image that you're seeing here for the residential piece is what that final vision looks like. We received funding from the federal government for this project to the tune of just over $13 million. There is matching funds coming from Bexley. There are matching funds coming from Bexley and Columbus. Actually, that number, I think, has gone up a little bit since some inflationary pressure has been put on it. But with a federal project comes a federal timeline. So I want to contextualize this and bring sort of this timeline into clear focus. We're in the process today of working through, we started engineering with an engineering firm to take the beautiful images that we see with the Joint Livingston Avenue plan and bring them to reality with actual engineering drawings. This shows a timeline that's going to show construction kind of starting in the 2029 timeframe, roughly. But the real pro in the room, we have Jim and Eric with the City of Columbus. Eric's going to talk about, and Matt, if you could grab him a microphone. Eric with City of Columbus, one of the project leads on here, and also Matt Klingler, our new Director of Building and Planning, project lead for the Bexley side, are going to talk about what that looks like in the coming years. Eric.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to say I love the participation, everyone coming out. As part of the project, we will have a few public meetings. I hope to see everybody out there. I'm going to plug that now. Because this input and feedback is always appreciated to help make sure that the project is delivering. I heard some things tonight that we're going to track down and make sure that, hey, these are questions we're going to put to the consultant, make sure, let's find an answer here. And maybe the answer's that idea, we can't do that, but hopefully we can tell you why. So that we all have some clarity as to why we're doing things and how things are prioritized. As the mayor said, right now we are, we're working up what we call a preliminary alignment. So that is the step where we're going from this planning document, and it's kind of the first high level plan that we're putting on paper. So now we're starting to get some specifics. We're building it in a drawing. Some of the things that I've heard tonight, like the people using the turning lane as a passing lane. I don't think that's going to really work, especially once you get past college, whenever we're going to have medians in there. It really takes away the ability to race whenever you can't be side by side. I think the motorcycles, I don't know about that. That one may be a little more difficult. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to take what I would call these tactical solutions that have been put out there, the restriping and so forth, and all of the benefits, and we're going to put these into strategic solutions. So you're going to see hard solutions that will be a little more rigid as to what we're trying to promote in the form of safety throughout the corridor. We'll get a much bigger peek with that preliminary alignment, which is coming here in November. We'll look at it, we'll make some tweaks and give better direction as to the consultant so that they can keep moving. I do not remember off the top of my head when they have the first public meeting scheduled, but we'll get that out. Definitely, I would imagine that there will be a mailer, so everyone should get like a 5.5 by 8 card that has details on it. And at that time, we will have a more formal comment period. So once we get through that, that's when we definitely want to get comments, written comments and so forth, so that we can start developing a document that's addressing all of those. As the mayor said, ultimately the construction will begin. It can begin as early as the second half of 2028. Our budget, that's constrained to the budget year that the funding for this grant was awarded. So in between that time, we're going to keep going through the design. Then we'll have to get through probably the worst part of it if it's not the construction, but that's right-of-way acquisition. It's not a fun topic for anyone, okay? But a necessary one. We're working to try and minimize those impacts. But that will take about a year to a year and a half to get through. And then after that, we'll begin the construction process. I'm not sure what. I'm more than happy to take questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry to hop in here. But I'm just hearing 2028 and 2029, and I'm just saying that just seems too long to me. And I understand that we have to wait on a budget and a federal grant and such, but I mean, I'm looking at this as City of Columbus has a problem. And there could be a quicker fix to it, whether it be in the form of temporary medians, or some other traffic control measure that could further the improvements made by the resurfacing and painting. So I guess my question is, why not find a more moderate change in the meantime while we get to that point of the full redo?
Now you're talking a little bit over my head, but I'm probably going to guess that it's ultimately going to come down to the additional cost that gets down to it. Striping is relatively cheap. If you're talking about leveling it up to some quick curb or even some Jersey barriers, now we're talking a lot more money to either get them out and deploy them, purchase them and so forth. And I understand it's needed. Don't get me wrong. I understand this process takes a long time. I mean, a lot of our projects from fast is 5 years to get from conception through construction. That is extremely fast. Other than bourbon, I don't know many other products that have that side of the cycle.
Well, I don't mean to beat you up. I'm a Kentucky
No.
fan too. I went there, I see it. But I'm looking at this and I just, I drive on the highway all across Ohio every single day and I see those orange medians. I don't know exactly how much they cost, but I mean, if you throw a few of those in there in certain areas, it might slow down or impede somebody's ability to cut over. And I'm looking at this as a city council member as Columbus's problem. We feel like we're stuck up here because we only own so much land or have control over it. And the remainder is Columbus. We just heard the police tell us they don't have the resources to assist us right now because it's not a violent crime area, thank goodness.
Right.
But there's still danger out there. And so I guess, Eric, not to beat up on you, but if you could send that message back that we're looking for some form of a temporary solution prior to 2028, 2029.
I will bring that back. I will say that I do appreciate the question because if you have it, I know I've gotten it on other projects from a ton of other people. I know it's odd. Our process is a little weird in that way. So I appreciate the opportunity to address that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How much of the right of way you're gonna need? I mean, I look at this and I see medians,
Yep.
traffic, planting, and we're gonna have white sidewalks. And I look at the width of Livingston right now, and I'm going, I don't see it. Get right away.
I'm saying we may have to get right of way just as it's kind of a matter of fact. Right now, I don't know where, I don't know how much. If I was a betting man, there's going to probably be some right of way. I don't have the specifics. Okay. So I'm trying to manage expectations a little bit by bringing it up at all.
And that is going through engineering right now. So that's that November alignment Eric talked about. There's going to be a follow-up meeting in, I think it's early 2025. We talked about a workshop where those sorts of, that's engineering now has survey, topographical, looking at those specifics. The right of way extends a little further past the sidewalk. And right now Livingston has that striping between the curb and the travel lane, which, so it works a little bit better than you might think, but it's definitely going to need, it's in the process of close study.
I'm just doing rough math because that's what I do. But up there, if you add up all those widths in that cross section right there, it gets to be, I think it's 80 feet roughly. Generally the corridor, I believe from what I've seen on documents, ranges between 70 and 80 feet throughout this section of Livingston. And to the question about Linkus, I've got another project on the other side of 70, going Livingston all the way down to Children's. That corridor is 60 feet wide. So that's really tight. We're trying to do about the same thing with a lot less space. So I don't know how Linkus would get through a 60-foot corridor. Yes, sir.
Some discussion about the sidewalk, the idea of 10-foot wide sidewalk. When I saw that, it scared me to death because we talked about the motorcycles and mopeds and the ATVs that are out there now. When you take that lane away, you give a 10-foot wide sidewalk, guess where they're gonna be? They'll be on the sidewalk. In fact, I wouldn't even put it past with the 10-foot sidewalk, seeing cars come down through there, people that are racing now. We're not talking about average folks here, we're talking about people in the fringe. And it scares me to think about a 10-foot wide sidewalk. And frankly, I think that makes it sound more like a commercial area than a residential. I just don't know why we would want a 10-foot wide sidewalk. And I don't want to give up part of my yard, and I don't want to bring anything that's out there now closer to the house. I consider that a security concern for the reasons it doesn't come up here tonight.
We're next door neighbors, and we have both seen people on the small sidewalks that go past our house right now. Those mopeds and things like that are on there all the time now.
I've done another project where I completely believe this because we put in a shared use path, very similar, maybe different nomenclature, but it was 10 feet wide and the road took a 90-degree turn. As soon as it opened, saw an old lady just go up a driveway and then start driving down the shared use path. She didn't even know it. I mean, she got to a bollard at the end, and she didn't know what to do. So let me bring that back and see if we can find some solutions. We've got a few things to juggle, like we got to keep people who have driveways, they got to remain open. I think anyone who has a driveway will appreciate that. And then by law, we need to keep what we technically call a pedestrian access route. So that is our fancy way of saying this is a dedicated path, whether it's the full width or not, that meets ADA requirements, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. So it's a challenge. I hear it. If people are going that far out of their way to just do whatever they want, I'm not exactly sure how we can engineer that better, but I'll bring it back and we'll see if we can come up with some ideas.
And real quickly, but on this point, a counterpoint, which is one of the major concerns that we have as a city and that we heard as part of our plan is pedestrian safety and cyclist safety. So those are, when we look at the serious accidents that have occurred in Livingston, even just recently, it tends to be pedestrian and cyclist where that's the real issue. A shared use path gives a safe route for cyclists. And we have an analog right now. If you drive up Alum Creek, south of Main Street, you're seeing a very similar condition in that Alum Creek Greenways Trail. Now, I haven't heard, now it's not in Bexley, although a portion of it is. I don't hear a whole lot of reports about other types of vehicles using those. And there are bollards installed and there are other key indicators that those are not streets. And when you come along side streets, you're jogging with ADA ramps, and there are other changes that are different from a straight up street. So those are really important in the design phase. But I think the thing that we need to keep front and center is we're trying to protect people who are cycling and people who are walking, and then property owners along the street by creating these additional barriers for greater safety on the corridor. And that's a big piece of that concept.
Yes, ma'am. That is on my other project that's just a little ahead of this. This is something that we got into very deeply with the Columbus Fire Department. One of the solutions that we're talking about implementing with them, we need their help with it, is the word preemption. That's it. Sorry. The technologies, essentially, we call it preemption. So there will be a GPS transponder in the fire truck, and there will be a receiver at each intersection. So when the fire truck gets close there, they'll communicate and it will turn the signals so that they keep going. Like they'll get green lights. Fire trucks, emergency ambulances in particular, of course, they still have to do their due diligence through intersections and so forth. But this should help it going. That's one of the topics that we talked about. You see that you have one vehicle and you have curb on each side, can't really get over. So the best thing that we can do is keep going and make sure that there are as many opportunities for the fire department to cross. Yes, sir.
I'd like to piggyback on what Councilman Marcelino was speaking about. It's moving a little quicker by using the orange dividers for safety purposes. To be blunt, what's more valuable, human life or waiting on getting something done?
I appreciate that. We can bring that back, and see if there are resources to do something like that, but that too will need to go through a design cycle, to make sure it meets all the requirements of the manual for uniform traffic control devices, which basically so that anyone from Ohio is kind of driving on a similar road, like the way it's signed and so forth, that it's what they expect. So that's why we've got a design.
Eric, we have time for like one or two more questions.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're great.
Yes, ma'am.
Something maybe we could do in the interim, where you have plans to put those beautiful medians in the center. Maybe we could put some of those orange barrels that you just took off of Broad Street and finish it.
I will make sure that gets up the chain and see if we can do that. Okay. Yes, sir.
So I have a comment question. Anyone that drives on Livingston on a daily basis, like I do, understands that the road diet made Livingston or Francis and Livingston college much more valuable. Because the cars race from the college from the corner, 2 lanes to get to
Yes.
the single lane.
Yeah.
And then they race going west from where it goes from one lane to 2 lanes. And when people are talking about motorcycle racing and that, I think that's where the majority of it is. Is there any short-term plan to help that area and slow down that traffic? I have been asking for a while for a speed test, whatever, work on that intersection, and hasn't happened so far. That is a much more dangerous area than it was. What the city wants to do to slow it down, so at least.
Much more dangerous.
I'll definitely bring it back to the team as far as like right now, what essentially I would say the plan is getting from 2 lanes down to 1. You see that taper. My first thought went, right. No, I understand that. And then to exacerbate that, if we somehow tried to put in a left turn lane at the same time, I think that gets very, very challenging. Right now it's very challenging, but we're putting on another for the driver.
Would they consider putting a left turn signal on light at College and Livingston?
That's,
Can I ask?
yes, if you can save me on this one, that one's a little over my head.
I'll say. So I will say, I mean, these are all good. So I guess to go off of what this process is going to be, there are federal dollars that are attached to the ultimate improvement. With that, we do have to follow that whole process of public engagement. There will be more formal opportunities to comment. When we get to preliminary engineering, there's going to be an opportunity for everybody to come in, and you'll be able to weigh in on a variety of things, actually put comments down. We do have to follow what the Ohio Department of Transportation says we have to do to clear what we call an environmental document. The public engagement is part of that. This is just kind of an information purpose meeting right here, but we'll get into those more formal ones. I'll say if you have a specific question right now, to me, the best thing for you to do is put in a 311 request. Talk about that. That will go to right now, what you're talking about falls under our Division of Traffic Management. So they are the ones that handle all the signals. They're the ones that put out there, if there's a speed request, you want to do a speed study, they'll go out, they get those requests, they do them throughout the city. I understand, there's talk, you want to do a temporary solution now. This is 1 quarter. We could be doing a temporary solution on the other section of Livingston. We could be doing it on probably 100 other sections in the city of Columbus. These little temporary things, they're not cheap. It's not just putting up, you put up barrels. We were looking at something on Broad Street. It was like $1.5 million to put up a little temporary demonstration that also has to meet safety requirements. So you can't just put barrels up, then there's a liability we take on. So it's stuff that is
we look at it, we take it seriously. We gotta make sure that we're doing it as best we can.
All right.
You know, but anyhow, that's. So.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Eric. And we're going to do some more thank yous here in a second. I wanted to really quickly introduce, I introduced Matt Klingler a second ago. Matt is Bexley's point on this project from the city's side. We have staged this website, bexley.org/Livingston, actually since the joint Livingston Avenue plan. We're going to continue to populate that with a lot of information. Matt, how can people get a hold of you if they want to provide feedback?
Yep. The best way to get a hold of me is mklingler@bexley.org. You can find my email on the website. You can also call me at 614-559-4243. That's my direct line. So if you have any questions, and I'll be responsible working with Megan Meyer, our director of development, and Natalie as far as updating the website. It's an 8-year process. So if you don't see any updates, for like 6 months, don't, be upset. You can call me, you can email me. And certainly if you have any questions or you want to get something to the city of Columbus, and I can reach out to Jim and Eric and take it back. We have monthly meetings that I meet with them. So I'm the PM from our side. You can get a hold of me. Okay.
And we will have a public workshop as part of this coming up in the early part of 2025. Real quickly, can we go around the dais and introduce ourselves? I'm really proud of the team that we have here, and all of your elected officials are up front here. Let's start with Megan, who is our
Danny Hurley, City Council.
Alex Silverman, City Council.
Jess Saad, City Council.
Lorianne Fleibel, City Council.
Sam Marcelino, City Council.
Quinn Martin, City Council.
And we also have with us Columbus Council member Lourdes Barosa de Padilla here. Lourdes, do you want to say anything? Thank you for joining us. And you can use that microphone right there.
So good evening, everyone. I am Columbus City Council member Lourdes Barroso de Padilla. I actually chair Public Service and Transportation for the City of Columbus. I want to thank our team for being here today. And I'm also, importantly, your neighbor. I actually live in Eastmore. I was born and raised in Mayfair on South Wyatt Avenue, where Eastmore High School is, and live on South Kellner Road. So I was born and raised. This is also clearly the district that I represent, pretty much the southeast part of Ohio. So Ohio, I'm giving myself a raise. Columbus, so that's everything from the border of Bexley down to No Bixby, down through the south end to Obetz, and then up through Driving Park on Livingston. So I want to thank folks for being out here today. I would also encourage you to also reach out to my office. I work very closely, obviously, as a chair of public service, but we've been doing lots of exciting things. I'm sure if you haven't heard of our Vision Zero project, which is the vision that that there are 0 fatalities or serious crashes. And that has to do a lot with infrastructure. So we talked a lot about enforcement, which I think is where people think about a lot at times, is how they think about how we enforce the laws. But one thing that we know is that we can't always prevent human error, but we can build structures that help to prevent some of the things that we're talking about. And I know I've been chairing public service for 3 years now, and some of the things that we see feel contrary to what feels obvious, right? But a lot of work goes behind how we build our streets. We're working with MORPC, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, on thinking about a complete streets policy for the entire region that thinks about how we reconstruct and rebuild our streets to include safety within that. And so some of the things that we are talking about, road diets and lead pedestrian intervals that gives people more time to cross the street, Vision Zero, how we are, again, thinking about our infrastructure to protect us against that human error, are things that we are digging deep into. And so while this project is one that is a longer term project, we are thinking about what we call quick fix or tactical urbanism projects, which are some of the things that you all mentioned. I will tell you, barrels will do nothing. People can still hit barrels. It is like a caution sign, right? And there are other fixes that we can think about, certainly. And that's something that we've been having conversations about, because as we think about the corridor, you cannot think about Livingston without thinking thinking about Main or Broad. They are all three of them go together and they affect each other, because right now we're doing a project at Broad and James, and people go down my street because they're trying to avoid the project on James because there's a backup now because of traffic, right? So we know that these things happen, and these are constant conversations that we're having. I want to thank Mayor Kessler because I know that he is deeply committed. We're serving on committees together at Morpsey, and I know that he's deeply committed to pedestrian safety, deeply committed to traffic safety. And thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I mean, this is, I live in a piece of Columbus that is between two other municipalities. And so we are dependent on each other. What happens in Bexley needs to go all the way through to, well, what happens in Columbus, then happens in Bexley, then happens in Columbus, then happens in Whitehall, then in Columbus again, and then Reynoldsburg. So I think thinking about how we use our streets and the input of all of our residents, whether you live in Columbus or not, is important, because I think your chief said it, what you see and what you feel is important. And the data, we know that that is one piece of that perspective. So again, I encourage folks to reach out. I'm happy to come to any other meetings like this or have conversations with folks about the things that we are seeing in your parts of the neighborhood, which is my neighborhood too. This is where we shop. This is where my kids ride their bikes and come to Bexley. It is, to me, just another neighborhood of a greater part of city that we all love and live in. So again, thank you for being here today, and thank you for all your comments and feedback.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, we are coming up on an actual council meeting starting in 3 minutes. So real quick, next steps. We've been writing down the questions that we've received this evening. To the extent that we can get clear answers, we will be distributing an FAQ through our website and on the blast with answers to some of the questions that weren't able to be pulled directly tonight. Couple things to just let you know about. I want to just celebrate this council that we have here tonight. They have funded flock cameras. Those came up this evening. We have a dozen flock cameras that are being deployed in Bexley, have been deployed in Bexley, and are currently in the process of going live. They have really doubled down on funding of public safety. Our police department is better funded, better staffed than it has been in the history of the Bexley Police Department. We have more officers than we have ever had before, providing greater service to our community. And I want to just celebrate you as a council for making that happen and allowing us to do that as a community. And I think we've seen with our chief here tonight, those dollars have been really well spent, and we're seeing them pay back in spades to our community. And so I want to thank you, council, for that support. And it's something that we're going to continue to always prioritize here in the city. Will have public workshops following about Livingston Avenue. You can stick around and learn about tax increment financing if you want to this evening. We will be starting that council meeting in 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks to Columbus. Columbus did not have to join us. You guys are great. Thank you for being here.
I got